Cade Mila is a Fáilte, and welcome to the very first episode of The Irish Hack. You're probably wondering, what the hell is The Irish Hack? Well, The Irish Hack is going to be a new series on my Spotify, Apple, and YouTube channels, whereby I'm joined alongside Kevin Markham, renowned golf photographer and writer, where we try to break down some of the courses in the country of Ireland. Over time, I hope that I'd aspire that we get around to all of them, but that might not be possible. But we just talk a little bit about golf course design, who designed the course, tournaments that it's hosted, specific attributes that we liked of the course, and maybe things that we didn't like. So listen, it's going to be released every single Thursday morning, 6 a.m. The Irish Hack, the name of it, not set in stone yet. I'm still trying to work out what would be the best name. If anybody has any suggestions, feel free to reach out. I hope that you enjoy this new series. If you have any thoughts or feedback, please do let me know in the comments or through my Instagram or Twitter channels, and I'll happily take on any feedback. All right, guys, listen, have a great day and enjoy the episode. Today, I'm joined by Kevin Markham, renowned golf photographer and writer. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm great, thanks very much.
Do you have any idea how many golf courses are in Ireland?
I would say there, in terms of 18-hole golf courses, probably about 350. And then for the 9-hole courses, somewhere around 85 or 90.
Okay, well, out of those 350, the first one that we're going to review today is Portsalon up in Donegal. Kevin, if I was to ask you one word to describe Portsalon, how would you describe it?
Ooh, one word. The second hole is probably one of the best holes in Ireland. Does that work?
That'll work for me. The one word I used to come up with was charming. It's just... It's a fun golf course, not overly long, 6,172 yards off the white tees, par 72. And we had some discussion beforehand. We've been talking about this for a few weeks, and you mentioned that it's like still underappreciated no matter how many people visit it. Do you still believe that?
Yeah, I think it's there are a few courses around the country that have always surprised me for, they don't get the high profile. And it's not like Portsalon lacks in anything, because the conditioning is fabulous as well. I mean, some of the other courses that I think are really, really good, their conditioning is not great, so they kind of get pushed to the side. But Portsalon doesn't have that. I think the arrival of St. Patrick's at Rosapenna will make a big difference, because it makes that corner of the world a massive destination. And I think Portsalon will be, discovered by an awful lot more travellers.
Completely agree. Like when we went up to Donegal back in June, or maybe the end of July, whenever it was, and we heard so many great things about Ballyliffin and Rosapenna, because they held these massive tournaments years ago. And we got to Portsalon on a Monday morning, no real massive expectations. And I'll mention it later, but like your original impression of the place might not be blown away, but then you reach the second hole and it's hitting over the beach, and then it continues. It doesn't stop there. It's like the seventh hole, I think, is playing along the beach as well. And I was blown away by the place. And the people will argue that the front nine is like more picturesque, but the back nine has equally as beautiful holes in terms of playability and experience of playing them. I just thought it was such a fun place to go up in Donegal.
I would agree with you entirely. I mean, it does tend to go inland on the second nine. I think your point about the views and the spectacular drama that comes on the front nine, it is repeated on the second nine, but because you're further inland, it's inevitable that the front nine stands out more.
Yeah, and then you come to the 14 tee box where you're standing up on the tee, and you look back over it and you realize, oh my God, this place is just absolutely majestic. Like we started all the way over there in the first, we came up along the sea, and then we've weaved in and out since that, and an extremely, extremely fun course to play. The history of the course is like pretty interesting, and you'll know a good bit more about this than I will, but it opened for play in 1891 as one of the founding members of the GUI, and in 2000 it was redesigned by Pat Ruddy, who also has a few other golf courses around Ireland. Named them with me, the European Club, Druids Heath. I think he had some impression.
Oh, well, Pat done Sandy Hills, he did Ballyliffin, the Glashedy course there. Yeah. Pat's been a busy man over the last 30 years.
Yeah, and if you're ever lucky enough to go down to the European Club, he'll probably greet you on the first tee. But back to Portsalon, like you mentioned before, that you had a pretty interesting story of some buried sailors in Portsalon, which I've never heard of. So I'm extremely eager to hear this one.
Well, obviously it's rather tragic, but I think it was 1811. The HMS Saldanha got basically washed into Faneuil Bay and floundered and sank, and every single sailor, all 250 of them, perished. And the only two creatures who survived was the captain and his parrot. And they got the captain onto the beach, and they gave him poteen, and he couldn't deal with it, and he died. And the parrot was shot in somebody's garden a couple of days later. So, I mean, it was pretty much a whitewash of every single creature on the boat. The story goes is that the sailors were buried in a mass grave underneath the 18th fairway. So when you play the 18th, you go up this huge hump towards the green, and legend says that's where they're all buried.
See, Kevin, that's why I have you in this podcast, because only you could come up with that sort of story, and it's too big to not to be made up. That's outrageous. Well, in terms of Portsalon, it's beside Ballymastoker Beach, which actually holds an EC blue flag for cleanliness. It's easy to leave off the list because Ballylifton is only an hour 30 minutes away, and Rossapena is only 25 minutes away. Port Stewart is close enough by, and Port Rush is also only 2 hours away. And you can find yourself have all these massive courses to go and play, and then skip by Portsalon. But in my view, should never ever be left off the list.
No, and what you've just mentioned there is a perfect example for Duke's Golf Club down in Kerry. It's the one that typically gets left off, even though it's brilliant. And Portsalon is the same. And Portsalon is charming. You use the word charming. Yes, I mean there's certainly a huge amount of charm in there. The front nine is brilliant. You've got some double greens. You've got 2 double greens. It's not heavily bunkered, which I think makes it far more playable, certainly for a links. I mean, you take the Glashidi up the road, and I mean, that's heavily bunkered. Okay, it's Pat Ruddy. He likes creating difficult golf courses, but he didn't do that when he got to Portsalon. I mean, there were 9 brand new holes that he created in 2000. And I mean, it's not a stunningly difficult course. It's more about playability, and an awful lot of the holes just flow through easy channels of dunes, and I mean it's incredibly appealing to the eye and charming, as you said.
Yeah, and that actually leads on to my next point. Just like kind of the whole experience when you arrive into Portsalon, like I mentioned when we first got there, the clubhouse is nothing to be really blown away by. It's simplistic. And it's very similar with the first hole. The first hole, you get on, you stand out, and it seems like a big open fairway, and then you have a blind shot into the first green from about 80 yards, and you're left feeling like potentially a little bit underwhelmed because you don't get a full view of the beach and the mountains in the background, and you're not sure how it's going to play. And then, like you mentioned there, the experience just turns inside out when you get to that second tee box. You arrive to Ballymastoker Beach, and it's this massive car. Like you have a lot more experience with the second hole, and you describe it as one of the best holes in the north of Ireland.
I go further. It's one of the best holes in Ireland. I absolutely adore the hole. I mean, the first time I played it, you step up. I mean, as you say, the first hole leaves you slightly underwhelmed. There's nothing particularly dramatic to it. I mean, it's still a good links hole, but it's not until you get up to the top and you're standing on the tee. It's 430 yards, not quite sure. And you've got to play over and around a beach and a river. And your second shot is then over that same river. And it's all about, you've got to decide how much you can bite off with your drive. And then that determines what you can do with your second to get into the green, because, a lot of people are just going to go straight down to the river. And it's not a small little river. I mean, it's 20 yards wide. So it's nothing insignificant. You've got 2 big shots to get to the green. And that explains why it's index 3.
Yeah, I'm looking at it here off the white tees. It's like 236 to the fairway target, which leaves you 138 yards in. And you're completely right. It's one of these really exciting holes whereby you have an exciting drive and then an exciting approach as well. You're feeling brave. You're onto the second tee box. You might have made a par in the first, and you're like, I can take out a driver here. And you hit it down there, and you're probably going long into the gorse bush or something. And you're walking off onto the third tee, and you're like, why didn't I just take a 3-wood? I would do anything to go back and play that once more. And if you hit 3-wood like I did the first time I played it, you could just duff it 20 yards in front of you. So it's and then like I mentioned, that's just a tee shot. The second shot then is like a bunker short or on the right hand side of the green, and it doesn't look overly difficult, but you know that river's coming down across the front of the green with all the red stakes that are marking it out. And it's just one of these thrilling holes, not overly long. If you do it properly, you might just hit a 3-wood and then a pitch and wedge in. But it's just you don't want to do it first thing in the round. You want to just take a driver and just hit as far as you can.
I love the idea of a 3-wood and a pitching wedge. Doing golf, you hit the ball a lot further than I do.
Downwind.
One of the things I'm actually amazes me. I actually read this the other day. Somebody was talking about Portsalon, and they were slightly disappointed with the course, and they said it was more of a holiday course. And I thought you need a good smack because it's a brilliant links. And then they started comparing the second hole to the legendary first at Machrihanish, which everyone claims the opening hole is like the best opening hole in Scotland, in the world. It depends on who you talk to. There's actually, it's a lovely opening hole at Machrihanish, but it is nothing in the realm of how good the second is at Portsalon. So I think for any of the people who are listening, watching this, if they've played Machrihanish, go to Portsalon, you will be completely re-educated on how brilliant a hole playing over a beach is.
Very, very fair. Yeah, I think when you're looking back on Portsalon, I think the only thing that might leave people a little bit disappointed is not being able to spray driver everywhere, because it is quite a short course, and if especially longer hitters might just hit rescue or 3-wood in a lot of places. But coming back from it, and I took out driver a lot, and I shouldn't have taken it out half the time, but like it's very hard to determine. The thing I'm looking back on it now is it's very hard to determine a driving line off the tee. Like the second is a big dog leg to the left. The third sways a little bit to the right. The fourth is driving over a little dune in front of you, and you're not sure what line to take. The sixth is a gentle dog leg left. There's just so many gentle dog leg lefts and rights, and you just want to spray driver, but it's so hard to take a driving line. And I said this to you on the phone before. That's what makes me want to go back to a course, is thinking, why didn't I just hit a 3-wood here? Or why didn't I hit driver here? Why didn't I take on this corner? And Portsalon left me with that feeling once I left it.
I think it's interesting what you're saying there about taking driver and things. Part of the brilliance of what Pat did there, and also Paul McGinley, he did some work more recently, is because there's so few fairway bunkers, it really messes with your head off the tee. It's difficult to get your line. If you have a fairway bunker to look at, it gives you a sense of depth. On a Portsalon, you don't get that, and that makes the driving lines very tough.
Absolutely. And I was going back through this and thinking about that day coming home. We actually got a camper van and we were coming home, and there was 4 of us in it. And I counted the number of bunkers. There was 26 bunkers in total, 11 on the front, but those 11 on the front, 3 of them were on the 8th fairway in the par 5. So realistically, it's only 8 bunkers in total. And you're standing on the line and you look at your stroke saver and it's telling you to hit it to this point, but it is so hard to determine where that point is when you're just looking out into kind of like a vast area that's coming between small little dunes, and there's nothing really to aim at. And I think that's just the brilliance of it, because a lot of time it's like you've mentioned it to me before on Twitter, a lot of Irish courses are just over bunkered and littered with bunkers, and people think that that's good design. Portsalon shows that you don't need to do that, and actually leaves you with much more questions when you don't have a bunker out there.
Yeah, and that extends to the greens. They typically one bunker on one side of the green. Now, that gives you an opportunity, a really good opportunity, if you're on the right side of the fairway. If you're not on the right side of the fairway, then suddenly you've got that one bunker that is messing with your head. So it's, again, really smart design work.
Yeah. We speak then a little bit about the design features of the course, like the shared greens. And I wasn't even aware of this before I came down. Like third greens shared with the 9th hole, the 4th greens shared with the 8th hole. I loved that. Now, we were the first group out that morning, so we didn't obviously get to share the green. We didn't the come and back holes. I think we shared the ninth hole and the eighth green, or the ninth green and the eighth green. But I loved it. I thought it was such an interesting feature, and I wouldn't like it on every course, but I just thought Portsalon, kind of like you mentioned, kind of quirky course. I thought it was so fun to play.
Yeah, there are a few nice quirks there. I mean, it does work. It adds such an element of interest. I mean, it's so easy. Just you have two greens quite close together. They're separate greens. They're treated separately, and then you put them together, and suddenly it gives it an entirely different life. So, I mean, you think about how long you can have a putt on one of those greens. If you were to be on the wrong green, you're still allowed to putt it, right? And you could be putting 60 yards.
Yeah, unbelievable. Just in terms of the front nine, then, like, it's the front nine is the picturesque nine, and that's where if you have a camera like yourself, you'll probably go around taking a lot of photos there. But the golf holes out there equally is stunning. Like I mentioned, a lot of dog legs left, a lot of dog legs right. I think it's the 7th hole that goes along the beach. Reading my reviews of that, or maybe it's the 6th hole, actually. It could be the 6th hole.
I think it's the 6th.
Yeah, reading my reviews of the course, like, I didn't see many people mention the 6th hole. I thought the 6th hole was an excellent hole. Like, you stand on the tee box, you're kind of blown away, and you're hitting at the Knockalla Mountain, and it's a constant target your whole way around the front nine. That's my thoughts. Is there any other holes on the front nine that really stand out to you that you'd love to play every day?
Well, I think the entire stretch from the second. I don't think I want to play the second every day. I think it would hurt too much because it's such a struggle. But I mean, after that, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, all of that running through those. There's a very distinctive section of that course where the fairways are quite low through dunes, which kind of rise up on either side. So they really channel the hole. I really like that. So I mean, that's why I like that opening section of the course. I think that works incredibly well. All the way up to 10 or 11. 10 is the par 3 that people I think would talk a lot about as being probably the best par 3, and it's just I just really like what that section of the course does, and that then leads into the back nine, which for me is not quite as interesting. And again, maybe that's because it's just moved away from the beach that little bit in that run of dunes, but there's still a couple of outstanding holes to be played. I know you like the 17th.
Yeah, I really like some of these holes in the back nine. Like the 10th, you're coming off the front nine and you might be battered or whatever, and a lot of people just tell themselves, all right, okay, let's just go on the back nine. Let's score 18 points or 20 points and try to scratch this back. The 10th is 135 yards. You have a good opportunity there to make birdie. It's not the most intimidating, but there's 2 bunkers on the left. There's a little runaway area to the right-hand side of the green, and you only have maybe like a pitch and wedge or a 9-iron in your hand for a lot of people. And you think to yourself, this is so easy, but the 2 bunkers on the left terrify you. So you try to aim a little bit more right, and then you're off into this little runoff area. I thought the 10th was like one of my favorite par 3s and very picturesque as well with the mountains in the background.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's the one that usually gets singled out. I'm always fascinated with links courses as to how often it's safer to be short or how often it's safer to be long. I think certainly on that hole, probably play longer because of those bunkers and leave yourself with a longer putt. So it's just, I mean, it's a question of preference, but also, somebody once said to me about Enniscrone, never go long at Enniscrone. And you can't. If you go long, you're dead. But other places, I mean, Portsalon, I think you have a little bit of room, not huge amounts, but you've got some there to play around with.
Yeah, the other one I loved was the 12th hole. Just when we're talking about par 3s, I think the 12th hole is an equally stunning par 3. Like, and there's good variety in the par 3s here. Like, they range from 140 to 182 yards. It could be anything from, and that's one thing I really value in the course, rather than just hitting the same club, a 6-iron or a 7-iron all the time, is having a short one, having a chance at a birdie, but also struggling to make your par on other ones. The 12th hole is 153 yards off the yellow, and the dunes provide a lovely backdrop to it. And I think it's similar enough in the fact that there's 2 bunkers to the left and then runoff area to the right. But I think it's coming the other direction, whichever direction that is.
Yeah.
And I think it's just such a fun sequence of holes, the 10th, 11th, and 12th, just to wound yourself around.
I think it's the same with all these courses. It's you find yourself loving a particular string of holes. It may just be 5 individual holes. It could be a stretch. I mean, that's what I was saying about the front. I love that stretch of holes, pretty much the entire front 9. I think that works incredibly well. The back 9 too. I mean, you talk about 10, 11, 12. I happen to absolutely love 13. And I know it's not a course everybody likes or a hole everybody likes. It's because it's right up against the woodland. So it's almost as far from the links traits as you can get, but it's still a links hole. But yeah, I mean, that's one of your quirky holes, followed by the brilliant 14th. So take your pick.
Yeah, I think that'll be probably our first disagreement. I personally wasn't a massive fan of the 13th hole. It was, I can see the appeal, but like I just don't really like holes where the decision is almost made up for you off the tee. And when you stand on that 13th tee and the tree is coming well out onto the fairway from the left-hand side, there's a run off the fairway to your right-hand side. As per the stroke saver, it's 215 yards to your target, which will leave you like 95 yards in. But it's 318 yards off yellow. I would love to just have the opportunity just to be able to see my ball land and say, you know what, go take driver here. I'm getting towards the back 6 holes. And I feel like that tree on the left-hand side just limits my ability just to see that excitement go.
There's not much I can say. I disagree. Like you like some things, I like others. I mean, it's always the nature of a golf hole. It's the same with a golf club, right? Or any golf course. You know, you might love this and somebody else won't and will disagree with you. So I mean, I just like it. I think it's a bit quirky. I like the way it's for me. It's nicely timed in the round. You've kind of got into that links rhythm. You've been playing for 12 holes, so you're going along really nicely, and then suddenly you get this real spanner in the works because it's just something completely different. And it's actually followed by the 14th, which is another hole that can really undo your round. That's obviously index 2, I think. 13, I'm not sure, but I do see your point of view. I mean, that's why I'm saying at the start, you know, it's kind of a love-hate hole, and sometimes it's good to have that in a round of golf because it's a hole that people can talk about.
Absolutely. I'm sure it won't be the first disagreement that we have, but it is something interesting when you're speaking there with your partner on the tee box and they're like, "Jesus, this looks like a nice hole," and we disagree, and it's kind of like a good discussion point. Then you mentioned there about the 14th. I wanted to get your thoughts on the 14th. Are you a fan or not a fan?
Oh, absolutely. It's a beautiful hole. You're teeing off from the highest point of the course. You pretty much drive over the 13th green. And then it's sort of like this, like an S shape to the fairways. It weaves through and then down onto a lower ridge. So, I mean, it's just really, you've got to pick your target. I mean, you're talking about looking at the stroke saver. I have no idea what the stroke saver would say in terms of where you should aim. I mean, I tend to just get up and hit the ball and decide whether I'm going to go with a driver or a 3-iron or something. I don't have a 3-wood. So, you know, I pick between those two as to which is the safest option. It's a long enough hole. It's something like 400 yards from the whites. So, you know, you've got to try and get down through that little channel that weaves its way down onto the lower level. So it's a really, for me, it's an intriguing hole because you've got to make a big decision on the tee.
Yeah, I'm going to come across like I'm a scratch golfer. I'm so far from a scratch golfer, but I agree completely. It's 386 yards off the white tees, index 2. I absolutely love the 14th hole. Like, there's a bunker right there that's 234 yards off the white tees. And you think to yourself, right, I'll aim right of that and have a simple approach into this green from about 150 yards. But the problem is that the fairway slopes off to the right and you can get yourself in a huge amount of trouble. So it requires a lot of precision hitting off that tee box, and sometimes you don't even see your ball land. The ideal shot, if you're able to carry it, is actually over the left bunker. But when we talk about the beauty of Portsalon, there's very, very few bunkers out there. So if you do see a bunker, you're thinking, I'll avoid that. But in this instance, it's actually such a well-placed bunker that's almost a bunker that you need to take on to avoid rolling off the fairway to the right. And then I remember that day playing it. The green is just, I think it's such an interesting green. It slopes, there's a little bit of a mound to the front right, and then the middle left slopes towards the back. I think it is such an enjoyable hole, and it's index 2, but you don't feel like you're getting battered. You feel like I had a good chance to make a par there, but I just messed up by taking the wrong line here or there.
Yeah, I think that's the same with most of the greens. You know, finding the right line in is one of the great challenges of Portsalon. And it's going back to my comment about the lone bunker. that always kind of intimidates you if you're on the wrong side. And even if you're on the right side, it can be very intimidating because you think it's almost easy to get in, and it never is.
100%. I'm jumping on to 50 or on to 17. Any thoughts on 15 or 16, or do you love either of those or hate either of those?
No, I for me, they would be sort of like alongside the first. They're kind of getting you from
filler holes, kind
A to B. Filler holes. They're not bad holes, but they're not as interesting. They kind of separate from the rest of the course. Again, they're slightly inland. But yeah, 17 is a slightly different fish.
I love the 17th. I thought it was... So the 17th is a big dog leg, kind of right to left. The fairway slopes from right to left as well. And you kind of want to hug the left side to give yourself... It's par 5, index 8, 477 yards. Hug the left-hand side to give yourself the best chance of getting into the green. But the fairway slopes hard from right to left. I think it's such an exciting drive because you're trying to aim so far towards the right because you can see the fairway sloping, and you know to yourself, if I hit this in the left center of the fairway, it feels like it's going to bounce towards the water, and then I'm out of bounds. I think that drive was like probably one of my favorite drives on the course.
It's a brave shot. I mean, this is, as you're saying, it's not a long par 5. 470 yards is not long. So you just got to play it very carefully with that slope, because it can affect you all the way to the green, and it can be, it's a beautiful hole. Again, the natural shape of the land causing all kinds of chaos for you.
And I think it's the left side of the fairway is the kind of flat side. So, am I right in saying that?
I think so. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while for me too. I think the left side, whichever side, just one side is the flat side. It could be the left. And if you hit that, you have a good chance of going for the green. Whereas if you're on the right-hand side, or vice versa, whichever one's right. Whereas if you're on the right-hand side, the ball could be above your feet and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I'm just going to pitch this down the fairway. But the ball is so far above your feet that you're thinking that I can't hook this left, which is preferable shot shape for a lot of right-hand golfers. And if you hook it left, then your ball is dead. So there's just so much excitement in it. And one of my favorite holes. And then it finishes off on the 18th over, just referring to that story that you got back to there. The 18th is a fun hole. It's a good chance to make a birdie. It's pretty open off the tee, and you won't be left with a huge approach shot in. I think it's like if you hit 230 off the tee, you're left with 130 yards with maybe a 9-iron or a pitching wedge. I think the 18th is just a good fun hole. Nothing spectacular about it, but if you're playing a match play and it goes down the 18th, it's going to be a great one.
I think again, that comment about sort of filling in, it's not dissimilar to the first hole. It's just getting you back to the clubhouse. So, it's a nice enough hole again. I don't have any problems with any of the holes at Portsalon. I like them all, even the 15 and 16. But there are very strong holes, and then there are some holes that aren't. I don't think the 18th is one of their stronger holes. But, it's a bit like the first. It's getting you to a point. For sure.
Kevin, any other closing comments on Portsalon Golf Club in Donegal?
But the beach stretches for 2 miles alongside the course. It's a beautiful long course that takes you right out to a far point. Like it's not a 9 out, 9 back kind of course, but it takes you a long way out along the beach. And I just think you're going to have a huge amount of fun in the dunes, and get into a bunker and you feel like you've really missed out because there just aren't many bunkers that you should be going into.
Exactly that. And then, like I alluded to at the start of this, you kind of weave back inland, and then you get to the 14 tee box and you look back over and you're like, geez, this is such a beautiful place. And then you're just heading for home. And I think it is such a fun course. Definitely should be on everybody's hit list for 2023 or even the end 2022, whenever you want to go.
I would hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Kevin. I think we'll leave it there. You can find Kevin on Twitter at Kevin Markham, writing for the Irish Examiner and the Irish Golfer. Also, be sure to check out his fantastic golf photos at kevinmarkhamphotography.com. And finally, to add to his list of achievements, check out his book called Hooked, which was originally released in 2009, and there's been 3 editions since. So cool. Be sure to check him out. You can find me on all social media handles at the Plug Lie. Garmila Matagut, and I'll chat to you again next week.